All right, guys, welcome to the Onelife Podcast. Here today with Chris. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You have an amazing story where you were drinking alcohol, addicted to alcohol, which led into a fitness journey, into personal training, nutrition coach, meditation, sound healing, now teaching all the above, correct?
Yeah.
That's got to feel good. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I feel so blessed.
How old are you now, if you don't mind me asking?
31.
How old do you feel now?
How old do I feel? I feel like
do you feel
21.
young? Yeah, I was going to say, do you feel younger now than you did a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Like when drinking, you had bad habits?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people just think as we get older, we need to feel older, we got to slow down, but I don't think it's true. I think it's more the opposite of anything.
Yeah.
I want to touch on, so you said you're addicted to alcohol, you're drinking. Where did that start and why did that start, if you don't mind sharing it?
Yeah. No, I don't mind at all. I grew up in a household with a family history of addiction.
Okay.
Grew up in a household where that was pretty tumultuous. And my whole family, we're so close now and we've all grown so much. So I can say that, it was a lot of trauma that I think leads a lot of people to addictions, whether it be to food, gambling, there's
so many different types, right?
Yeah. And there's so many different coping mechanisms that people use to mask what's really going on underneath. And it takes a lot of self-awareness and willingness to grow to be able to move past that. So it was, I started drinking right out of high school and it very quickly progressed to the point that I didn't really recognize myself anymore. And I knew that I did not want my life to be that.
Was it like with parents, was it monkey see, monkey do? Like if your parents were stressed, that's how they dealt with it? Or did they just enjoy drinking? Or what was it exactly?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a coping mechanism. I didn't really understand it, I think, growing up. I didn't really understand how bad it was. Your normal is all that you know. So my normal was all that I really knew.
And what your environmental, right? What you see.
Yeah.
And you don't really know any other way because that's all you've ever seen.
Yeah. And honestly, that's all my parents had ever seen.
Okay. So, okay.
Yeah.
And that's got to be hard to break.
Yeah.
Like a vicious cycle like that.
Yeah.
Have you got siblings?
I do. Yeah.
Were they the same or was it just you? Or?
No. My siblings went wildly different ways. Not having to go through the pain of, kind of what I did. I'm so grateful that I did. It made me who I am.
I was going to say, I always ask that, would you go back through it? And most people were like, yeah, because it made me who I am today. Yeah. Mentally, physically, just... Yeah. Yeah.
And now my little brother, we're 20 years apart and my family has grown and, everyone is sober and everybody is thriving. And so he is growing up in a much, different environment. I'm really happy for him and he's an amazing kid.
That's amazing. Is that because of you?
I think
like leading by example and changing?
What's so interesting is I think the reason I am the way that I am, self-aware and wanting to grow and expand, I actually got that from my mother and my parents.
Okay.
Even though they were trying their best to figure out how to deal and cope in their own ways, I actually think that, especially like my mom, she's the one that taught me like anything is possible. And she's the one who taught me to be self-aware and she's the one who taught me about growth. So I almost feel like we've grown together.
Okay. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you think it's important to be told that you can do anything and not being set by limiting beliefs?
Yeah. I
think it's important. Because I'm silly enough to think I can do anything.
Me too.
I tell everybody that at this point in my life, I'm silly enough to think I can do anything.
Yeah.
And I'll get nobody telling me I can't. And I think that either being naive or just being focused or whatever it is, I like it. I think it's good.
Yeah.
What was How long were you drinking for? And what was like the wake up call? What was the turning point where you're like, hey, enough's enough. Like, I need to get on top of this.
Yeah, like I said, I started drinking right out of high school. I actually didn't really party much in high school. It was after high school, and then I got sober when I was 26. So I kind of, because I had grown up around it, and I had also grown up going to recovery meetings, and so I kind of knew that it was a problem. And I think I started, it's funny, I started listening to podcasts.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, self-help podcasts, even like podcasts like Dr. Drew, fitness podcasts, different podcasts. And for about a year and a half, I remember from the time that I knew that I wanted to change, but I wasn't quite ready until...
Were you all sure how to, I'm sure?
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to do. I wasn't sure how to move forward. And actually listening to these podcasts, a lot of them were sobriety podcasts and recovery podcasts, but a lot of them were, fitness, nutrition podcasts too.
Okay.
And really learning about it helped, because I feel like first I could see other people's stories, and then I could also understand a little bit behind why people get into addictions.
And understanding why is probably like huge, right?
Yeah.
And then you could understand why you're doing it. And if you understand why you're doing it, you can understand how to change it.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Was there a certain podcast that you started with that you can remember, or a certain thing that just like resonated with you the most?
I remember this. I remember the Dr. Drew podcast. I think I started listening to Adam Carolla, and Dr. Drew was on Adam Carolla's show, because Adam Carolla was a huge podcast. Probably still is. I don't listen to it much anymore, but yeah. And then I was listening to Dr. Drew, and then his podcast was fascinating because he would talk to a bunch of people in recovery. So I think that's the one that I remember most, but there was definitely a lot of like fitness podcast and nutrition podcast too, because I had gained a lot of weight. I grew up and I was always very active. I was a dancer.
During school and stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. And in the last couple years of my drinking, I had put on about 60 pounds.
Okay.
So that was really hard for me. I think a lot of my identity was wrapped up in being a performer, being fit, being
looking good, getting
looking
attention.
Good. Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of my identity.
It's like your blueprint, right? Mm-hmm. And when your blueprint's taken away, you kind of feel lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also noticed that a lot of putting the weight on was actually a part of protecting myself. I had been in a very abusive relationship when I was in my early 20s. And I found out after going to therapy for a few years that I put on weight because I was trying to basically keep people away from me.
Okay, like blend in and just don't stand out as much. Yeah, that's interesting.
And of course the drinking, and you don't eat very well when you're drinking all the time.
That's interesting. So it's probably a good 6 to 8 years where you're...
Yeah, probably, yeah. I would say 8 years, like, total.
Yeah, that's a long time. That's good. Yeah. That's got to be hard on many levels to break away from. So they always say, like, if you want to get away from something negative, start consuming positive stuff. And that's literally what you did. And then as you got a taste of it, you just started like more and more and more. Yeah. And then you just kind of found a way out. Yeah. When did you start training? What got you into eating better? What got you into the personal training path?
Yeah. So my sister, God bless her and her husband went to CrossFit, and I had worked out before, but never anything. I didn't know what I was doing. I would go to the gym, lift 5-pound weights, and
jump on the treadmill.
I would jump on the Stairmaster for 45 minutes to an hour. So her and her husband invited me to CrossFit. At the time I was still drinking, but I would go to CrossFit like once a week, and I really liked it. And then there was one day that I had been listening to nutrition podcasts. I was trying to figure out how to lose weight, but I was still drinking. Then one day I woke up, and people asked me like, what got you to stop? But it was unexplainable. I just woke up one day and I was like, I can never do this again. Really? I can't do this anymore. And I was so sick. I couldn't get out of bed. And I was like, I'm done. And I dove into fitness and nutrition head first because I needed something else to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So I went to the CrossFit gym that my sister had invited me to. I got really into CrossFit. I went keto.
So you dropped a ton of weight.
I dropped 55 pounds in, I would say, like 2.5 months, 3 months.
So people hate on keto, but keto really works.
It does.
Keto is amazing.
It does. And I use it, back then I would have told you that like carbs are the devil, and I was so on the keto train. And I still am. And I think once I became a nutrition coach, a little bit later, I realized that keto is a good tool. It doesn't necessarily,
tool being the right word.
Yeah. And I was keto for like a solid 1.5 years. I did not eat carbs.
And it's not for everybody.
No.
But some people live and breathe it. Some people like the carbs.
Yeah.
I mean, and like you said, I use it as a tool.
Yeah.
If I want to suddenly drop a bit of weight, keto is the quickest, especially in combined with intermittent fasting. But I mean, that's my way. It doesn't make it right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's whatever works for you.
Yeah. And it's whatever works. Yeah, exactly. Whatever works. And I'll do it a couple times a year just to kind of like reset my blood sugar. And it's good to go through like a cycle of it. So I really like it, but I don't necessarily think that it is the only way,
Exactly. Yeah. As far as if you got someone else out there who any type of addiction, been through or going through what you've been through, what do you kind of tell that person?
Yeah, I've noticed, I think, through the years of going through my own addiction and recovery, and also witnessing, people close to me going through it, and also having clients who were going through.
So that's got to be huge, right? You're relating to clients on so many different levels, not just being overweight level. Yeah. That's cute.
And it's interesting because I, dealt with clients who had, I wouldn't necessarily call it an addiction, but we'll say a problematic relationship to food, as I think most of us do at some level.
Yeah, at some level.
Yeah. And realizing when it came down to it, which is why I got so into yoga and spirituality and mental health, is I think it really comes down to self-love.
Okay.
And digging into the hard reality of what we think about ourselves and what we're saying to ourselves, and trying to come back to that love.
That's a hard conversation with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like everybody has like talks negative to them. What's that saying? You wouldn't talk to a friend the way we talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's exactly what you're getting at, right?
Yeah. We actually just posted something about that on our page the other day. It was, if your thoughts were on a speaker, would you let people hear them?
No way.
Like, would you say that to somebody that you loved? Would you say that to a child? And,
so why are you talking to yourself that way?
So why are you talking to yourself
that
that
way? Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
You got addicted. Well, I wouldn't say addicted, but you focus your addiction on something positive, right?
Yeah, I definitely was addicted to fitness and nutrition.
And that led you into wanting to be a trainer and then nutritionist.
Yeah, so I also started going to a studio here in town to do yoga at the same time I was doing CrossFit.
Okay.
And I was like, I have to be an instructor here. So they weren't doing any training classes at the time. So I went to an independent trainer to get my certification. And then I went back to the studio and I was like, you have to let me teach you. And I had the most amazing mentor she was like, yeah, come on. And I was a dancer. So I ended up teaching bar classes and boot camps and all of that. And then, as I'm going through this journey, I started working with personal trainers, training under personal trainers. Myself becoming really obsessed with more like weightlifting and bodybuilding. And so then I ended up going to get my personal training certification. And the whole time I was always obsessed with nutrition, learning about all of the different diets, nutrition, keto, paleo, vegan, all of it. So I ended up getting my nutrition certification as well. I actually wanted to change my major to do nutrition, but it would have taken me an extra couple of years. So I ended up going from being a fitness instructor to taking on personal training clients and nutrition clients.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What do you think most people go wrong nutrition-wise? Do you think they're just sticking their head in the sand? Do you think they're just being naive? Because I'm in the impression that everyone's an adult. Most people, well, everybody knows what's good and bad for them. At what level is different. But I mean, 60% of us are obese now. Like 60% of us are pre-diabetic or diabetic. It's very scary. Do you think people need to educate themselves more, or you think people just need to take more accountability for themselves, or a bit of both?
I think it's probably a bit of both. I think that there's a lot of information out there, and it can be very overwhelming.
And very confusing, right?
Yeah. Very overwhelming, very confusing. You'll watch a documentary about veganism, and then you'll watch a documentary.
Which is very biased, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so many of the studies are biased, and so much of the information out there. So it's a little bit of, you have to take accountability for yourself and learn, or learn from somebody that you trust, right?
I was going to say, what makes what you say trustworthy or what I say trustworthy?
Right.
That's the thing.
Right.
There's nothing giving us credibility besides what we say and the way we look.
Yeah.
So yeah, you kind of got to do your own research on that, don't you?
Yeah.
Like the Liver King, you saw what's going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Perfect example.
Yeah. And I always lean towards the, because there's so much out there, I always lean towards the evolutionary nutrition advice. What is common sense? So for instance, something that's in a box is not natural. Like try to eat as close to natural as possible, and then allow room in your diet for, pie or whatever on Thanksgiving. Right.
Yeah.
But
having
typically in my education from learning about all these different diets, the closer you can stay to nature, the safer you are, because the cause of a lot of these diet-related diseases is inflammation in the body.
And sugars and oils.
Inflammation is essentially caused by processed food. So I tell people, look, if you go and study all of the diets out there, there's going to be one thing that all of them say, and it's lower your processed food, which includes sugar and includes, I could go into all the different all the different types of processed food.
I like that you say that. I always say if it's not killed or grown, you probably shouldn't be eating it.
Yeah.
Which is just another way of saying the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't think inflammation is really talked about enough. Talk to me about inflammation. Why are our bodies inflamed, and what makes it so bad?
Yeah. So I am not a doctor, but
but you have an understanding.
Yeah. I have an understanding. So essentially, when your body isn't used to processing something, it's going to cause inflammation. And acute inflammation in the body is good. If you get a cut, you're going to get a little bit of inflammation that's good to heal. But chronic inflammation is going to cause some serious disease in the body. And
what type of stuff?
Hormones being off. That's the biggest one. So inflammation affecting hormones, because your hormones are basically what keeps everything running.
An imbalance, right?
Yes, an imbalance. So inflammation is going to cause some significant hormonal problems, and just the processes in your body, the way that we think, our focus, our sleep, all of that is affected by inflammation.
Just the simple stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that you said just
even simple
sleep. Yeah. Even just like aches and pains and your knees hurting. Generally, it's just from inflammation in your body. You get rid of inflammation, you're amazed at what things go away. Yeah. Like I used to suffer a lot of tendonitis. And when I took my inflammation away, guess what? It all just disappeared. Yeah. It wasn't rocket science.
Yeah. Headaches. I know.
Skin, acne. Yeah. Even like the way your menstrual cycle can come. Like all these different things. Heartburn, indigestion. Yeah. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah. It's wild. And it's mostly just caused by ingesting things that your body can't tolerate or doesn't know how to tolerate. Some people have sensitivities to food that is also perfectly fine, which is why I think it's important to do research on your own body and learn your own body.
Yeah,
for instance,
absolutely.
Dairy. One person can do completely fine with dairy, and one person can be extremely intolerant to dairy, even to the point of an allergy. So there's a spectrum too, even when it comes to eggs. Eggs, I think, are probably one of the best foods on the planet.
Yeah, the most wholesome, well-rounded. Yeah.
But some people can't tolerate them. So it's interesting to see some of the science that's coming out now that's looking like a lot of dietary, I don't want to say preferences, but the diet that's best for an individual will be based a lot on their heritage, their history, where their ancestors evolved. So it's looking like it's going to be it's going to turn out to be very individualized based on the person, which makes a lot of sense. So I might be able to eat dairy, but your ancestors might have grown up somewhere where they didn't eat a lot of dairy. And so you don't tolerate it as well. So that's why I think that that's where the accountability comes in, with people taking accountability to learn about their own body, doing, an elimination diet, which is where you eliminate dairy for a couple weeks and see how your body responds. And then when you eat it again, how do you feel? Do you have headaches? Do you have trouble sleeping? Do you have brain fog, right? So playing around with that. And that also helps with like the body connection, the connection to your body.
And you could also argue, I can have dairy, but it's not good for you, and it doesn't make me feel good or function well.
Yeah.
So you can kind of argue, just because you can have it, should you even be having it?
Yeah.
And I'm sure, can you tolerate dairy or not?
I have a little bit of a sensitivity to dairy. I have cut it out before.
Do you feel better when you do that?
A little bit. It's not anything too noticeable.
Really?
Yeah, it's not anything too noticeable. I do notice, like, when I have hard cheeses, I don't tolerate that as well, but I can have like mozzarella and I usually don't have any issues with it. But
okay.
I know people who have dairy and like they get brain fog, they can't focus, bloated, their stomachs are bloated.
Yeah, stomach issues.
That happens to me with gluten.
Okay.
Actually, I wouldn't even say gluten, because I think that gluten is kind of gluten gets a bad rap, but I think it's like wheat in general, and the processed wheat that we have in this country. It's very different than if you were to go to like Italy. But so I get the same thing with wheat. Anything that has like wheat flour or anything in it, my body doesn't tolerate it very well. Yeah.
Nutrition coach, personal training. What's some of the best things that's come out of that for you personally and other people you've helped?
I've seen a lot of people transform their lives in the gym, but outside of the gym, I think, is the part that was the biggest surprise to me.
What do you mean by that?
A lot of the reason that people put on weight, a lot of people, when they, go to the gym, they're looking to lose weight or look better. Not everybody, but I would say
but
that
for the most part, that is the initial reason, isn't it? Yeah.
I would say that that's the initial reason. A lot of the reason that we get to a state that we're not happy with, it has to do with mental and emotional stuff. And so when they would come to me, all of my clients were my friends, all of them. I have a close relationship with every single one of my clients that I've trained. And that's because we talk about like what's going on in life. And when they started to take care of themselves and show up for themselves, it built their self-love and self-esteem.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's what happened with me, is that I didn't even realize, is when I started to show up for myself, I then became a person who showed up for herself and loved her body and took care of herself.
Okay.
So I think when I started to see that, I started to see people make other changes in their lives, whether that be, getting out of situations that weren't making them happy anymore, or, manifesting, new jobs, new relationships, just because they felt better about themselves.
And you talked about before we started, like more of a lifestyle coach opposed to a personal trainer these days, right? And it seems like this has actually come up a lot on these podcasts. Yeah. You got a personal trainer, but more they're a lifestyle coach, and I was a personal trainer for 8 years, and it's listening to people's problems, suggesting things. It's more than just losing weight or getting a six pack.
Yeah.
It's so much more.
Yeah.
So give me a little bit on that.
Yeah. So I noticed that, of course they're training with me, but they're only training with me in the gym for an hour or two. They really,
in the whole week, right?
Right. The whole week. If you really want to make change in your life, you have to like overhaul your habits. You have to overhaul what you're eating, your diet, the way that you meal prep, and the way that you plan for your week. And then we would dig into, what part is difficult and challenging, why is it difficult and challenging? Why is it hard for you to do X, Y, and Z? Or what leads you to overeat on the weekends, and getting into that mental reasoning behind why people do the things that they do, like that is the juicy stuff, because that's when you really start to change, because in order to make those changes, you have to recognize what got you there in the first place.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You seem very nice, like someone you could come to and share things quite easily. Me, I'm a little bit more black and white. But I feel like I can see, like, I don't know if it's the female side of it but yeah, you seem like you really care, you really listen, and then you address it based on the information which is presented.
Thank you.
So that's really cool.
Yeah.
You went like the fitness, the nutrition, and then how did you get into meditation? That's something I've been doing for 2 months because of this podcast.
Oh.
Kept hearing it. I'm like, I got to get into this because everyone I look up to and respect on this podcast is doing it. And for me personally, it's been amazing, but it's only been about 2 months or so.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I had actually practiced yoga for a long time.
Yes. Were you kind of doing it with the yoga?
Yeah. So
okay.
I started yoga really before I started meditation. So my spiritual journey was, I had done all of this work on myself and self-growth, and my mental health, my emotional health, my physical health, my social health, my relationships had gotten better, my career had gotten better, and I was missing something. And the pandemic, I think, caused a lot of people to really assess the way that they were living. And I noticed when the pandemic happened and I had nothing to do, I had no job to go to,
no gym was open.
No gym was open.
Yeah.
We were kind of just sitting there with our thoughts, and I realized that I felt very empty, and I was kind of covering that up with all of this stuff.
Staying busy.
Staying busy and training people and helping others and fitness instructing.
A book in your ears or reading, or never actually taking time for
never
you.
Really getting quiet and
getting quiet being a good way, right? Yeah. We talk about this a lot. Like, we don't do anything.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing anything, what's the first thing you do is pick up your phone, and all of a sudden you're doing something again.
Or even listening to, I would go out on a walk every day to get my steps in, and I would have an Audible in. So
I'm just as guilty.
Yeah. Which is great.
It's great, but sometimes, like, hey, this is a 20-minute drive, this is a 20-minute walk, and I'm not turning anything on. Yeah. I'm going to be up here.
Just sit with your thoughts and just be, and like let yourself process what's going on instead of kind of just always shutting it off.
You really got to want that though, don't you?
Yeah.
Because automatically I was like, audiobook, this. I'm like, just stop and just take time for yourself.
It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to
uncomfortable is a good word.
With ourselves sometimes, unless we know, and that's where the spiritual journey came in, is for me to finally tap into what's going on in there, because sometimes it's scary. Sometimes, it's hard to face ourselves unless we have the tools and coping mechanisms to know how to walk ourselves through that and see the dark sides and the hard things, and also love those things. And that's really hard, I feel like, for a lot of people, myself included. I can still find myself getting caught up in the busyness and be like, okay, I need to sit down with Chris for a second. And we need to, get quiet, and that can be hard. So that's once the pandemic happened, and I realized that I was feeling very empty because I didn't really have any like soul connection to myself or anything outside of myself. It was just me running. That's
interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So what, you just started, like, how did you get into it? Did you do some guided ones? Did you go to a class? Like,
yeah.
Or did you feel just the need to go there? Like, what was the transition?
So I'd always done yoga. I had always been in that. I've done yoga now for about 13 years.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd always been in that space, but it was never really a spiritual practice. It was more of a physical practice.
Okay.
But I also knew that it calmed me down. So there was something about the breath
And
quieting
that's
the
definitely
mind.
you time too, isn't it?
Yeah. And I consider that my meditation as well. But then when I would start to read books, or I would see videos on Instagram, and kind of went more down the spiritual route of kind of connecting to like the power within myself that is also the connectedness of, you want to say the universe, or the connectedness between all people, or, it's different for everybody. But yeah, starting to really dive into that. And then the meditation just became part of the practice. So there's a lot of different spiritual practices. And I think that everybody kind of finds what works for them and what makes them feel most aligned and present with themselves. And I think meditation kind of helps you tap into getting quiet enough to know the truth. And when you can find that quietness and that peace and that truth of yourself, that's kind of like your North Star. And then you can go out into the world.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah. Being aligned with, in the spiritual community, you would say like your highest self. Or
Gotcha. I found when I started, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much my mind's racing.
Yeah.
I thought I was pretty good. And I sat down, I was like, nope, I'm so far from good. I was, and then doing it on a consistent basis, now I'm able to settle. I feel a lot calmer all the time now. Just day to day, I feel like I'm on definitely a lower level of just being calm. And I wasn't hyper or strong or anything, but I just still feel better. And I've mentioned this before, if I've gone a couple of days and I've missed it, I felt like something was missing. I was off balance. I felt the urge to go back into it. Yeah. And then when I did, I felt settled again. Can you relate to that? Or is that it just me in my own head? Or
no, yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's important to practice mindfulness. It is a practice, and I feel like you do have to keep practicing. And it helps when you can quiet your mind, learn how to settle. And even if your thoughts are running, the practice is your thoughts run, you come back to the breath or the focus, or there's a lot of
I just kind of let them go.
Yeah, you let them go. And you can, with meta awareness, you can kind of step outside and you can see your thoughts without judgment. You can be like, oh, that was interesting,
Interesting, right? And some of the things you think about, why am I thinking about that?
Right, but you don't become the thought.
Yeah. It'd be something from years ago. I'm like, why is this lingering here? Like, what made me think of this right now?
Yeah.
It's very fascinating.
Yeah.
What have you got out of it the most, as far as like you personally? How has it changed you?
It has allowed me to grow with grace. And when I say that, I mean, there's a lot of programs that we learn mostly from our childhood, but throughout our life, there's programs that we learn. There's fears that we develop, and there's coping mechanisms that we develop. And all of those things come from us not necessarily learning how to process things, which I think most people in the world, struggle with coping in one way or another. And so those programs follow you into adulthood, and we are all kind of walking around the world acting from this subconscious programming that we developed as kids. And so meditation has allowed me to be mindful of when I am reacting from a place that I don't want to. So for some people that might be anger. For some people that might be, defensiveness. It's also helped me to understand when I start to have negative self-talk, when I'm fearful or am acting from a place of fear instead of acting from a place of faith, and being the person that I want to be. So meditation has helped me be able to slow down just in life and notice those things and then adjust when I need to. Yeah.
Right now you've been through a lot. You're constantly growing. You're constantly implementing new good habits. Where are you struggling now? Do you have self-doubt? Do you like, do you expect more of yourself? Like, where are you kind of at? Like, I know like the struggle's changed, but what is the current struggle?
Yeah. The thing that I'm focusing on right now is I notice, and it's interesting when you start to get into like somatic healing work. So these programs that we develop as children that we're running can get held in the body. So your body is actually remembering them, but we don't necessarily understand it. So a lot of anxiety is just those fears kind of in your body trying to tell you that you're afraid. So my thing that I'm working on right now that I'm focusing on is I always had this fear that the rug was going to be pulled out from underneath me somehow. Like somehow there was another shoe was going to drop, or so I kind of, me being busy all the time and achieving, which is great. It's also a superpower, but being able to slow down and realize that like everything is fine and life is good, and just enjoy and be present in the moment. Because I would find myself kind of, because of this feeling of like, I have to keep going or something's going to happen.
Gotcha.
Was causing me to not like just enjoy the life that I'm living right now, which is so beautiful. I'm so blessed. So yeah, so meditation is enormously helpful with that, because it's all about just like being in the present moment and being in the here and now instead of just running to the next thing and the next thing. Interesting.
Daily habits. I feel like you got a lot of positive daily habits. What are they?
Yeah, I love habits.
How important are habits?
I think they're so important.
They kind of set you up to succeed, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, the way I do it, I implement one habit at a time until it becomes a habit. And if I know I'm doing it without having to do it, now I know I can build on top of it. That's my way of doing it.
Yeah.
But as far as your habits, like, what are they?
Yeah, and they change. It's interesting because for a long time I thought I had to have like a certain, like all of these habits at once, but my habits morph and change. So
that's interesting. But you still have probably a staple, right?
Yeah.
A base that you do on a consistent basis, like exercise and nutrition.
Meditation in the morning, definitely. Yeah. And I have some kind of journaling practice, and my journaling practice changes all the time.
How long have you been doing that for?
Long time.
I'm like a weekend.
Yeah.
Not even a week.
Yeah.
How's that been for you?
It's transformational.
Is it really? Do you do it morning and night, or just?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the morning.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. In the morning, normally my journaling is more affirmational.
Okay.
And in the night, my journaling is more reflection.
I was going to say reflection.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also ending it with like, I'm proud of you. Because sometimes I feel like people can get reflective and be very hard on themselves for how they acted, when it's like, you know, positively reflecting on like, what were my challenges? Where could I do better? What did I do really well? Or if I'm dealing with a specific type of emotion, just writing about that emotion, just letting it all out, and that way letting it go.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Super interesting. What else are you doing on a daily basis?
Mirror affirmations, which I know how cliche they are.
What is a mirror affirmation?
When you look at yourself in the mirror and you look at yourself in the eye and you say whatever affirmations you...
Really?
Yeah. And it's...
Is that uncomfortable at first?
It is uncomfortable at first.
I bet it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I write mine on the mirror. And,
oh, do you really? Yeah. What do you write it on? I write it with?
A little like dry erase marker.
Okay. Do you leave it up there for the day?
I leave it up there for a while. Yeah. Until really? I want to change them.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So you stand, is it in the morning, at night?
In the morning. Yep.
So you just get up there and just...
Yep. I get ready, and I fully believe that, you know, we have to train ourselves into a new state of being. So that actually comes from feeling it. So if you want to be a confident person, if you want to be a fit person, you have to feel it and resonate with it inside of you. And so looking at yourself and saying the things, but also really feeling the things, like I am a successful businesswoman, or, you know, however, whatever you want to say in the mirror, like I am fit and I love taking care of my body.
That's cool. That's badass.
Yeah. Saying it, but then
Are you doing
feeling
it? Are you doing it dressed, like looking good, or are you doing it like first thing in the morning in your pajamas, or?
I think I do it all different ways.
Gotcha.
Because I like looking at myself.
The first one that's ever said that. I like it.
Yeah, I do it both ways. Because I like looking at myself when I, am no makeup and in my pajamas and loving myself that way. And then also like when I'm
in boss mode.
Like feel really powerful.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Are you reading on a daily basis?
Yes. Yeah.
I like reading. I love reading. Talk to me about reading.
Yeah.
How long have you been reading for?
I've always loved it. I think that once I got sober, that's when my reading really picked up.
Okay. Is it always been like self-help, stuff like that? Or
I love stuff like that.
Yeah, me too. It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
It's very rare. Like the average American reads less than one book a year.
Wow.
It's kind of scary, right? I knock out about 60 a year. I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're about the same.
I probably read I'd say 3 to 4 books, maybe 3 books a month, we'll say on average.
What has that done for you, and what are some of your favorite books?
Oh my gosh. So the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle is the book that I haven't read it, so now it's on my list. It's very good, and she's a female, and she but I tell people it's for male and female. It's about how she started living her life according to her.
And not for someone else.
Right. And even in the boxes that society puts people in,
I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
What you expect or what you should do, or
yeah. And what people think or society says happiness looks like. And she was like, I just want to go with what my heart feels. And, there's much more to the book than that, but it just woke me up to how I was living according to everything else but my heart, which started my journey on connecting to my heart. And
that's interesting.
I love, oh man.
You got so many you're struggling
with. I know. I have so many books that I love. Code of the Extraordinary Mind is the one that I just read. And that is really, you would love it. It's really all about how one, living according to your happiness and what makes you happy, and two, that literally anything is possible.
Okay.
What stops us is our fears, limiting beliefs, and the way that we act according to those fears. So us trying to control life, and when you can just let go and focus on having fun and learning new skills and have fun with the process, life opens up.
Process being the thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm a big believer of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and just going with the flow.
Yeah.
And whatever happens, and I will deal with it when it happens. And that's kind of all there is. That's all you can expect.
Yeah.
And the way you do it's not what happens to you, it's how you deal with what happens to you being the huge part. What other books come to mind?
One of my favorite books that changed my life along the same lines is by a very popular and revered spiritual teacher, Michael Singer, and it's called The Surrender Experiment. And
I have heard of that.
Yeah, it's very good. He is a spiritual teacher, but he also he owned a huge computer company by accident. So all of these things kind of came to him through his life by him just kind of releasing control and just being I'm open. I'm open for where I'm being guided, and I'm going to have fun with it instead of being closed-minded and thinking I have to go this direction. He just kind of surrendered, and his life story is incredible, but also just the principle of, surrender is, it's exciting, also terrifying, but when you start to see the magic of surrendering to life and just enjoying it, it's like a night and day difference.
Okay. So I briefly met your boyfriend
Yes.
And I'm a huge believer that like your 5 closest friends are your biggest influence. Those who don't increase you will eventually decrease you. He seems like an amazing person for you in your life.
Yeah.
How important is it to be around those people? He seems like the perfect example of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so funny because we just posted that on our page the other day too. He posted it. But it's the energy that you surround yourself with.
The energy. I like that. The energy. Because if people complaining, making excuses, that's energy. I like that. I've never heard it put that way.
Yeah. And everything is energy. So I'm a huge believer in that. So I'm a huge believer that if you go around and you're scared and you're fearful of something, you're going to receive that
Attract
back.
more of it, right? Yeah.
You're going to attract it. And if you are hanging out with people who are negative, or gossip, or, any of those things, that you're more likely to be in that energy and therefore attract that energy.
Absolutely.
So we're very careful about, surrounding ourselves with people who are positive, who are optimistic, who are excited, who, have that energy. And we have both grown and seen our lives expand in such an incredible way.
That's interesting. Going back to when you're drinking stuff, were you around the bad environment then? And how did you change that environment? Did you have to change your environment to change your habit?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah. So I was definitely hanging out with certain people that I had to stop hanging out with.
Who were probably drinking and partying and stuff, right? Yeah.
And I wouldn't even necessarily say that it was a negative environment. Maybe some of it was negative, but I think I just wanted to go towards activities, and just overall more growth focused.
Okay.
And more health focused.
Yeah.
So there was a certain energy that I wanted to focus on, and I had to kind of, I wouldn't even say cut off relationships, but
I keep hearing setting boundaries. That comes up a lot.
setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Yes.
And kind of what you did, right? Setting a boundary of how much
Yeah.
time you're now going to spend with these people.
Or I'm not going to go to bars, but if you want to go to dinner with me,
That's even better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
or if you want to go on a hike, if you, stuff like that.
Or come to the gym, do CrossFit with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come to the
I
gym
like
with
that.
me. Yeah. And naturally people fell away because, some people weren't into it, and that's fine. But I found my people who love that stuff.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So your meditation has led into, what are you doing exactly? You're teaching?
Yeah.
And you're doing big groups?
Yes. So right now.
And that's just amazing. I just want to say that's super
Thank
cool.
you.
That's really cool.
It's incredible. So my career has been in events my whole life.
Okay.
I went to college for it. I've been in events in Las Vegas for, over 10 years. And then I developed this passion for just overall wellness. And, I'm obsessed with nutrition, but I'm also obsessed with yoga and meditation and spirituality. So we started a company called Elevate Wellness Events. And we are, basically a company focused on expansion and transformation and elevating, leveling
Overall
up
for someone, like take an individual on so many different elements, right? Yeah.
And so right now what we're hosting events at Area 15 in Las Vegas, and it's yoga, meditation, and sound healing.
So cool.
And
I want to come.
Yeah, come next Saturday. So you should definitely come. I'll send you. But yeah, so and there is a little bit of a growth focus in there. We were doing workshops for our summer series, but right now it's more of a, focus for the day. So for instance, next Saturday would probably be focused on, getting ready for the new year and reflecting on the past year.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So you'll do it, but you'll have a
theme.
A theme. Yeah. I didn't like to say agenda, but a theme.
The theme, yeah.
I did so I did videography, photography. I did a video at the Rise Festival for a lady who was doing the same thing. And I wanted to sit down and be a part of it, but I had to work. But it was the middle of the desert, a whole bunch of people meditating, like the sound bowls. It was beautiful. And I was like, I want to just put my camera down and enjoy this moment. But so I really would definitely like to do that.
Yeah, it's fun. And it's nice. And, our biggest thing is we wanted to bring like-minded people together. So the community.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. The community that we have built of people who, just like you said, like people you can surround yourself with that are positive and, you know, lifting each other up and how can I help
not
you?
tearing each other down, right? Yeah.
How can I support you? How can I help you? And that community is just, that's the best part of it. You know?
That's really cool. And it just makes you want to be a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
Cold therapy. You're a big fan of it, right?
Yes. Yeah. So
let's go into this.
The gym that I used to work at, admittedly, I'm not too obvious. I listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff with people who are big proponents of cold therapy. And the gym that I used to work at, both of the owners were athletes and they had a cryo machine.
Yeah.
So we would use that for recovery and it was awesome. I think cold exposure, I tried to do cold showers, admittedly, maybe not every day. Maybe that's the new habit that I have to start implementing.
They're hard.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's good to get uncomfortable and shock your body. And I think that cold exposure is insane.
Just getting uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Just however you do it, do something that makes you uncomfortable. So therefore you're adapted and you grow.
Yeah.
If you're always comfortable, it's boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so Tony Robbins was the reason I got into cold showers. He's like, you take a cold shower, the rest of your day's easy. And that was 6 years ago. I've taken a cold shower every day for 6 years.
Yeah.
Still uncomfortable. I journal. Even in my journal now, it's like, what did you do today? It makes you out of your comfort zone. Cold shower.
Cold shower.
It's the first thing it pops up. And then if I do something else, that's a bonus. But yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah.
But what are you getting out of cold therapy, and how are you doing the cold therapy? Is it just showers, or what else
Yeah, I do that. I have not tried ice baths, though I really want to. So eventually I will try an ice bath. So I did cryo a lot back when I worked at that gym all the time, and then cold showers, especially for immunity. I feel like I never get sick when I take cold showers.
I've been sick for 6 years.
Yeah, it's insane. It's
ridiculous, right?
Yeah. And also...
Wim Hoffman, you a fan?
Yeah, I love Wim Hoffman.
Cold shower a day keeps the doctor away.
Yeah.
And you think it's crazy, and then you do it, you're like, oh my God, this is fact. Yeah. It actually works.
Yeah, it's insane. It's also good for, I listen to the Huberman podcast.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're familiar. Yeah, okay. So he talks about how he talks about the shiver effect for metabolizing fat. So when you can actually physically shiver, like you have to actually shiver, but when you can do that, it's actually good for like metabolizing body fat.
The bad fat, right?
Yeah.
But also producing more brown fat, which is a good fat.
Yeah.
All these little things you don't think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
So if I'm trying to, get a little bit leaner, then I just make myself shiver. I'm like, I'm losing weight.
Just shiver that body fat off. That's interesting. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And I think like the more mentally strong you are, the more you can perform on any base. And for me, cold therapy makes you mentally tough. And if you can do a cold shower, you can handle this business meeting. You can handle this like unhappy customer. You can handle this relationship issue. It just makes you more well-rounded.
Yeah. I feel like, I did CrossFit and I also did Spartan races for a while.
Like stupid stuff.
Yeah. And I feel like pushing yourself through uncomfortable stuff like that, people can hate on CrossFit and the modality, but pushing yourself past where you think you can't go anymore, whether it's in a Spartan race or CrossFit or even yoga class, you're sitting there. Or even
an extra minute in a shower.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, right? Yeah.
You're sitting there.
Yeah, even, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, exactly that, right?
Yeah. It's being able to mentally push through that and like knowing that you can get through it and you can literally do anything. It's all a mental game. Like cold showers, stuff like that. It trains you for that.
Yeah, that's when I was personal training. I'm like, keep going. Like, what, your arm's going to fall off?
Yeah.
As soon as you stop, the pain goes away. So just man up or woman up and just keep going.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
Yeah.
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, what's the worst thing going to happen? Like, you're going to pass out or throw up. You're still going to be fine. You're not going to drop dead from it.
Yeah.
But it's just push past where it's uncomfortable so you adapt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so crazy. As far as just overall, you got someone who's looking to change their life, looking to have a similar mindset to you, physically, mentally, spiritually. How do you get on that path?
Yeah.
How does someone become you in 5 years or 2 years or 10 years?
So it's interesting because I would say that I did this in reverse. Maybe not, but finding your why.
I love talking to you.
Yeah.
I always preach this.
Yeah. Finding why you want something. Because you can be motivated for a day, a week, maybe even a month to get up and go to the gym. But if you don't have a deeper why behind it, and same thing with diet, same thing with anything really, is if you don't have that why and that heart connection to it, then it's not going to be something that's long lasting. Yeah,
you're not going to maintain or sustain it.
Yeah.
It's I love it. It's got to, why is this important enough for me to take the sacrifices it's going to take to get where I want to get?
Yeah.
And that's only you can answer that.
Yeah.
And only you can make that important enough. And it could even be addiction, like, oh yeah, I'm ready to change, I'm ready to quit smoking, and then you get back onto it. But eventually, hopefully, something clicks.
Yeah.
And then this is my why.
Yeah. There's something that you know.
How do you find that why, though?
That is a very interesting question. I think that is where you start to connect to yourself. And that is where the spiritual practices and the mental health practices come in. And it might change. My why when I went to lose weight was I didn't want to feel that way in my body anymore, and another why was I needed something to focus on that wasn't drinking. And so I would go home and I would cook for 2 hours.
Really?
I would meal prep, I would go to class. And so my why at the time was I want to look better. And then my why has changed as I've connected more to myself and realized
it's become deeper, right?
It's become much deeper.
Much deeper. I'm finding the same thing. Yeah.
But find something that you can hold on to when your motivation runs out, because motivation is a limited resource.
I like you say that your why can change, because whatever it is to get you started, it's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever that is for you.
Yeah.
And then as that changes, and it might even if you're an overweight guy and you've never been on a date before, that might be a why.
Yeah.
I want to look better so I can go on a date. There's nothing
wrong with that. Or it could be a revenge after a breakup,
Yeah,
you want to make your ex,
take that as fuel, right?
Stuff like that is fine for fuel. I think just in the sustainability over a lifetime, if you want this to become, who you are, you'll eventually find that deeper place that it's coming from.
I love that. Just before we finish up, anything else you want? I know you're full of good information. Is there anything you want to share? Anything? I know we could talk for hours.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we talked about a lot of the gamut of things that I love and care about. So feel free to message me. I am happy to talk to people. I love meeting new people, inviting them into the community. So people are my thing. And yeah, I'm here to support people in their journey. And that's something that really matters to me.
Just giving back, right? And that's the deeper why too, right? You get to a point where what's the point of me knowing this and not sharing this?
Yeah, it's service.
And do you struggle sharing information, not being at the top of your game? Who am I? Do you ever question yourself?
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah. Yeah, I all the time, because I'm constantly growing and developing, and so I all the time feel like I can't share anything yet. I haven't
because I'm
learned
not here.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because when we started this Area 15 event, I definitely had lessons that I had taught before, but it was a big barrier for me to be okay, this is a big group of people, and how am I going to share it? And then realizing that, you know, everybody has something to say. And the people who need to hear it are going to hear it, you know, and
it's hard to get past that, right?
Yeah. What's also really important and kind of an epiphany that I just recently realized, I mean, I knew it, but to understand it is when you teach others, it helps you learn. So by teaching
100%.
others, you know, whether it's in fitness or nutrition or whatever, it helps you learn and it helps you grow. And in general, like, people need support and they need to hear that other people are going through. They don't need to see the perfect person who has everything
the
together.
relatability, right?
Yeah.
The humility, the fact that you are human.
Yeah.
You make mistakes. You've made mistakes. You're going to make more mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you see this picture perfect person, they're unrelatable. They're untouchable.
Yeah.
You don't feel comfortable reach out to that person.
Yeah.
Whereas you literally just said, reach out to me.
Yeah. You can see someone who might be where you're at, and, you know, if they're like, hey, like, yeah, today, like, I struggled a lot. I had a lot of fear, or I was very insecure, or, you know, and here's how you move through it. And, like, we're going to move through it together. And it's like, people feel like they're not alone. And that's at the core of what everybody wants, every human being. It's connection and love. Like, that's the core of why we do everything we do. And so to be able to foster that and try to serve in that way is something that, you know, I always try to do. And I try to shut down the voice that says, like, you shouldn't talk about that, you know.
I love it. You are amazing.
Thank you.
That was an absolute pleasure. I appreciate your time, and I like the fact you have trust to come and meet a brand new person you've never met before.
No, I love it.
But that was absolutely so valuable. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's surrender. It's, you know, when an opportunity comes, I'm like, yep, let's go, let's do it.